Yo, what's going on, snipers, and welcome to my final video of 2022, which is going to be the Hall of Fame, Channel Hall of Fame inductees. So basically, we're going to go through the results of the straw poll vote I put up like a week ago, which has 20 different votes on it. Well, 20 participants and 80 votes because there's 4 votes per person. And then we're also going to be going through my record book and taking a look at where those type of guys finished up, and also the guys that didn't make it into the Hall of Fame. We could take a look at where they finished up in terms of everything as well. So let's get into those results. So the lowest amount of votes, as you can see here, was Artem Teratukin, which isn't really a surprise to me because this guy was really good for us and for so long, but he's not really, I wouldn't really call him a Hall of Fame caliber player for his years. Like, I mean, there was tons of people that could have been in the Hall of Fame, but I don't really know if he would have been one of them or not. But he got the lowest amount of votes with only 4 votes out of a possible 20. So only 4 of the 20 people that voted for Teratukin. Then we go up to the next batch of people, which are the ones with 6 votes per person. Chad Burns had 6 votes and Calvin Shelley had 6 votes. So Calvin Shelley's not going to make it in, though that guy is forever cemented as one of the best goal scorers I've had, I'd say. At least like pure goal scorers. And then Chad Burns was one of the best two-way forwards I've had in a while that didn't win Selkies. That's probably because he was living behind Jaskalainen for most of the time in Houston, but he also had the lowest amount of votes. We head up, and these two were kind of a surprise. These guys do not make the Hall of Fame. So Morgan Griffin, that one was a big shock to me because I thought a lot of you guys liked Morgan Griffin. He was one of my best defenders by far. He was a huge steal of a pick, and this guy picked up over 100 points multiple times in his career, which we will show you guys some of that stats in a little bit. And also Connor Geeky is also going to be missing the Hall of Fame. Unfortunately, he was a really good player for us, and yeah, he was with us for his entire career. I actually drafted him before the actual Arizona Coyotes drafted him, so that's kind of neat. But he misses out on the Channel Hall of Fame as well. Now here comes the Hall of Famers. We'll start off with the lowest voted one, which there's 3 of them that are tied with 11 votes. So 11 out of a possible 20 people voted for these guys. Obviously, you guys could probably tell who the top one is, but Gene Thornton, Raimo Jaskalainen, and Matvei Michkov all with 11 votes. Not a surprise that Raimo and Michkov make it because Raimo was the best two-way forward I've ever had. I'm pretty sure he won like 8 Selkies by the end of his career. Gene Thornton, on the other hand, I was kind of surprised about in a way because even though he was a really good goal scorer, I really didn't see him as that type of player. But him and Jaskalainen were kind of like a dynamic duo in Houston for a long time. And Gene Thornton kind of, in my opinion, flies under the radar, but maybe not to all you guys that watch that series. Matvei Michkov obviously makes sense. He was one of the best players I ever acquired via trade, I should say. I brought him in from the Dallas Stars. I forgot what I gave up. I think I gave up like a guy named like Lawrence and some like first round picks and whatnot. But it was well worth it because Michkov, when you put him next to the first pick that's making it into Hall of Fame, Tyler Agostino, we had one of the best lines in hockey for quite a long time. And yeah, Agostino gets the unanimous result with 15 votes out of a possible 20. So basically, he was a no-doubter for most people. I don't know who didn't vote for him, which would have been a surprise. Like 5 people didn't vote for Agostino. So if you were one of the people that did not vote for Agostino, why didn't you vote for Agostino? So yeah, those are the Hall of Fame inductees: is Agostino, Michkov, and then Jaskalainen and Thornton. Not a surprise that we go with 2 dynamic duos that we've had in our series in NHL 22. Very excited to see who ends up getting into our Channel Hall of Fame in NHL 23 because we have drafted some pretty good players, and it's just all about seeing how they wrap up their careers and all that type of thing. Now let's get into our record book and see where a lot of these type of guys finished. Once again, thank you to Jeff for setting me this up. He made this nice Google Sheets. I don't know if it's public or not. If it isn't public, I should tell Jeff to do that so you guys can go take a look at it. But it has my records from every single franchise mode I've done up until the point I stopped doing them on YouTube. So if I end up doing a recap video afterwards back in like NHL 18 or 19, those stuff would not be included. But as you can see, most wins by a team over a franchise mode. Our Arizona Coyotes won the most games with 1,017. The most losses we ever had in a franchise mode, obviously a drafted glory team, which was Houston. But we did have some success in the playoffs, I should say. Yeah, then there's some other records from NHL 18, 17, and 19. I don't know if any of you guys even watched my channel back in those days, but if you want to go take a look at those videos, those are all out there, just not as good quality as the ones that they are now. But let's go through some of these regular season records. As you can see, the most career games ever by a forward is Raimo Jääskeläinen, not a surprise, and he makes it into the Hall of Fame with 1,558 games played, which is quite a bit of games. It could be also because I did turn off injuries, I think, in that draft to glory, so we didn't really suffer any injuries, and he ended up playing like 1,600 games almost. The most defensive games, Artem Teratukin with 1,722. This guy played a very long time, and then with injuries turned off, this guy just played a long time, like almost like 1,800 games, I guess, straight, which is ridiculous. So this guy was a much better Iron Man, you could say, than Keith Yandel and whatnot. And then we have a record that is actually from back in NHL 18, and that is the most goalie games played, and that was Darcy Corson back in my Minnesota Wild series. Now, I haven't really kept on to goalies a lot in franchise mode nowadays, because if you have a high overall goalie, they usually don't do too well. So, yeah, that's probably why Darcy Corson's all the way up there, because I haven't held on to goalies as long as I did in the past. Then we go below that, and you can see Gene Thornton was our best goal scorer of all time with 648 goals. Unreal. Like, I didn't realize he was our best goal scorer until a little bit ago, but yeah, he was our best goal scorer. Almost 700 goals in his career. And yeah, then he ended up retiring, like, I think it was the same year as Jääskeläinen, if I'm not mistaken. I can't remember exactly, because that live stream that we did to wrap up that series was like an 8-hour stream, I think it was, or maybe longer. So it was absolutely ridiculous. Defenseman most career goals was a guy back in my NHL 21 series with the Detroit Red Wings, Marcos Biggs, if any of you remember that series. Most goals in a season, Matvei Michkov had the most I've ever had in a season by a forward, and that was 64 goals he scored in a season back in 2030-31. Most goals by a defenseman this season was Morgan Griffin, not a surprise though, 29 goals. This guy was an unreal offensive defenseman, and I'm really surprised he didn't make it into the Channel Hall of Fame. But like I said, I think it makes sense what you guys said with Gene Thornton getting in. But it's definitely a tough decision. Like, I could have probably bumped it up to 5 votes for who gets in, but 4 people I think is a little bit more realistic, just because it's kind of similar to real life. Rookie goal scorers, most goals in a rookie season was actually Viktor Sadikov in our Arizona series. He had 40 goals, if you guys remember Sadikov. And then that's back from NHL 17, so probably nobody has seen that series, so we won't go through that. Yeah, I'll just kind of skim through these stats. If you guys want to take a look at this for yourself, if this is public, then I will put the link in the description. You guys go take a look at some of the stuff, but I want to take a look at each forward season rank and playoff ranks and stuff like that as well. But yeah, there is tons of different records and stuff like that you guys could see from even like my Atlanta Thrashers series I had back in NHL 21. There is just tons of stuff on here, and it was all made possible by Jeff, so give a round of applause to Jeff in the comments for putting something like this together. He likes making spreadsheets, and I don't blame him. I like making my roster sheets. So there's also like playoff records, like most career games in the playoffs. Agostino had 207. That's the most by a forward. The most by a defenseman is actually Marcus Sedin, which is kind of surprising considering Teratukin was with us for so long, right? But apparently it was Sedin. And then most career goals in the playoffs, Agostino. Like, Agostino was just one of the best playoff players I probably ever had. And yeah, he was just unreal. Like, how much playoff points did he have? Yeah, 209 playoff points, and I believe that was in like 207. Yeah, 207 regular season games. So he was over point per game over 200 games in the postseason. Mind you, playing with Michkov is going to do that to you, but he was unreal. So yeah, there's all these awards. I'll let you guys go look through that. Some other awards just for fun. Most forward Stanley Cup wins. Connor Geekie won the most. Well, there's actually a couple guys on Arizona that won 3 Stanley Cups, but they're there. There's a couple guys from the Avalanche series back in NHL 19 that won 3 cups on defense and goaltending wise. But then again, I usually like to keep my rosters as much together as possible. I don't really make that much trades. So there's that anyways. There's also this stats that shows my record with every single team I've done a franchise mode with up until NHL 22 at least. So you could see where Arizona is way the best. They had over 1,000 wins. The next closest was next closest was the Detroit Red Wings, which had 960 wins, and then up there also was Houston with 948, so pretty interesting on that count. You could also see like the Stanley Cups, the President's Trophies, and the win percentage. So with Arizona, we won 6 Stanley Cups, and we also won 3 President's Trophies. So pretty successful there. While with Houston, we did not win a single Stanley Cup, which honestly I wish we would have, but it kind of makes sense. And we never won a President's Trophy actually with Houston apparently. That's a really interesting one because we did recently win a President's Trophy with the Ice Tigers. So I guess I never won one with Houston, but you've already won one with the Ice Tigers, which is pretty impressive. And Arizona had the best win percentage by like 3%, which is pretty awesome. Let's take a look at some of these other things because I don't want this video to be too long for you guys, but want to wrap up this year and content and all that type of thing. So you can see the most games played. Jääskeläinen was up there, Agostino was up there, Burns was up there, Thornton was up there, Geeky was up there. Who else was up there? Shelley was up there in a sense. So a lot of guys that I actually put up on this poll were actually up there in games played. Obviously, the guys, if I would have started this like Hall of Fame thing back in NHL 21, Caden Matthews would have made it for sure. Yeah, he obviously is not in the Hall of Fame just because we're starting this in NHL 22, and hopefully we keep on going with this because it's quite fun. Also, you can see the most goal scorers, or the most goals by people. Gene Thornton's up there, Matvei Michkov, not a surprise. Agostino was up there, which is kind of a surprise considering he was more of a career playmaker, but he was up there in goals as well. Calvin Shelley up there, Raimo Jääskeläinen was up there. So a lot of those guys, once again, that I referenced to that are getting into the Hall of Fame or just missing out on the Hall of Fame were up there in goals scored. And you could also see that Agostino led in assists with 1,127, which is almost another 200 more than Raimo Jääskeläinen. So both those guys getting into the Hall of Fame, and not a surprise considering they were my best 2 point getters of all time. 1,687 points for Agostino, 1,444 for Raimo Jääskeläinen, and then 1,300 for Gene Thornton, which I didn't realize he was that high in points. And like plus minus wise, even a lot of these guys were really good as well. Like these guys are definitely going to be cemented in this channel's history. And yeah, there's tons of different things you guys can look at on this page. I'm not going to read all through it because there is just way too much information to possibly put in a short video. As you can see, best defenders, we didn't have any defenders make it into the Hall of Fame this year, but eventually, hopefully we do. You can see that Teratukin led in games played. He was also 3rd in goals. He was only the 3rd defenseman I've ever had to hit 200 goals, and he was the top in assists with 870 assists. But as you can see below him, Morgan Griffin with 692. And yeah, Griffin was 2nd on points on my defensive ever players. So 869 points. He was only like 201 points behind Artem Teratukin, and he played way less games. Because if we look at Griffin, he was all the way, where is he? It's hard to read on this sometimes. I know he was on here. Sharpshooters. Oh yeah, he was all the way down here. 738 games, and he had 869 points. And then Teratukin played like 1,000 more games than him and only had like 200 more points. So you could tell how good of a player Morgan Griffin was for our franchise mode in Houston. So there is some defensive records. Goalie records aren't really that much important because we didn't have any goalies once again make it into the Hall of Fame, and I haven't held on to goalies that long. But you could see like Sven Jansson and Stefan Soderstrom, those were the 2 best players, or goaltending wise, from our Sharpshooter series. And then the best one probably from our Arizona series would probably be Guillermo Correa, but Stefan Pettersson would also be up there for sure, which is kind of interesting. Yeah, Soderstrom had over 200 wins, so he might have been the goalie I held on to the longest in Houston. Yeah, which actually he wasn't. Daryl Golia must have passed him right near the end. That's interesting. But yeah, Guillermo Correa was technically our best goalie from our Coyotes series, which is kind of interesting because I more think of Stefan Pettersson for sure. Maybe because Pettersson was the better of the 2, I have no idea. So there is all that. And in playoff rankings, you can see the playoff points as well if you guys want to take a look at this. You can see that Jääskeläinen had 144 playoff points, but Agostino had 209, which is outrageous. Obviously, we didn't hit the playoffs as much with the Sharpshooters because they were a drafted glory team as we did with the Coyotes, but still. So there's all that. Defensive points in the playoffs. You could even see that Morgan Griffin had 65 playoff points, and he was all the way down here at, where was he in games played in the playoffs? I know it wasn't as much. Sharpshooters. Hard to find all this stuff when there's so much. Oh yeah, he was all the way here at 65 games played. So he had 65 points in 65 games, and he was literally a top 5 defenseman for me in playoff points, which is kind of funny. So he was doing it all in the postseason as well, and unfortunately he could not get that Stanley Cup. But he also did play a little bit of a season as forward in the end of that live stream he had, so they kind of make sense for his point production and all that type of thing. And goalie-wise, obviously this has not been touched really that much because we haven't held on to goalies much in the playoffs. But our best playoff goalie that we had in NHL 22 would be Soderstrom in terms of wins, and then it would be Korea, which is interesting that Soderstrom would be number 1 considering he never won a Stanley Cup. And yeah, then there's a bunch of like single season playoff bests and single seasons playoff or single season records and single playoff records. Goddamn, I can't talk. And then there's also like rookie records and stuff like that, so you could take a look at all that type of thing. I don't know if there's a thing just for other individual awards, because I'm kind of curious on if there's like ones for Selkies and stuff. Let me take a look. Oh yeah, here's the individual awards. We'll take a look at this right now. So the most Art Ross has ever won was Peter Forsberg in my Avalanche series. He had 5. Most defenseman Art Ross. This is something that doesn't happen that often, but Morgan Griffin won 1. The most hearts, we never actually, I know we have had heart winners, okay, never mind. Forsberg won 5 hearts for me in NHL 19, so my created Forsberg was a really good simulator apparently. We never had a defenseman win the heart, obviously, because that doesn't happen that often. Mitchkov had the most Lady Bings with 4. We never had a defenseman win the Lady Bing, I guess, but I thought Griffin won the Bing at one point, but I could be wrong. I thought Griffin won Bings. Maybe Jeff hasn't updated this part, but I could be wrong. Jääskeläinen won 9 Selkies over his career, so you could easily see why this guy got into the Hall of Fame. Morgan Griffin won the most Norrises with 7 Norris trophies, which is outrageous, but he didn't make the Hall of Fame. Ted Lindsay, most was Peter Forsberg with 5. Obviously, we haven't had a defender do that. Most Rock Richards was Joe Sakic in that series as well, so my creative guys were assimilating quite well back in NHL 19 apparently. And most hearts by a goalie was Ross Carter, and then Ross Carter also led in Vezna's, Jennings, and Ted Lindsay's in my Avalanche series. So I guess that Avalanche series was quite instrumental to my channel in a sense. But yeah, if you guys want to take a look at this, if this is public, I will put the link in the description so you guys can go take a look at it. Otherwise, that's going to do it for this little Hall of Fame video. Obviously, I wanted to do maybe more of like a Hall of Fame ceremony type of thing, but I didn't really have the time to make something really good for this because I've been doing a lot of roster work and recording videos. So let me guys think down below, and we'll see you guys in 2023.